Good morning, everybody. Thanks so much, John. It was great to hear your thoughts on innovation. I'm Tom Pitfield. I'm the President of Canada 2020. I hope you enjoyed last night's conference social at Shopify, and thanks again to the kind folks at Shopify for making that happen. And I'll also take this opportunity to thank our own staff at Canada 2020 for putting on this great event, led by Melanie Colson, Alex Patterson, but you'll see lots of volunteers around here, and so we're very grateful for making it happen. Can't do it without them either, so thank you very much. Excuse me. So Tobi Lütke actually started Shopify, as we heard last night, because of a snowboarding shop. He was selling custom snowboards online and realized there had to be a better way. So he sat down in an Ottawa bridgehead and started to code and create his own platform. And then he realized that platform could be used for other consumers and companies, and that was the beginning of Shopify. From there, and 12 years later, Shopify now powers more than 300,000 merchants in approximately 150 countries around the world, and they employ a team in Ottawa alone of 100, and I think around 1,500 worldwide. They've got 4 offices worldwide, so they're growing at a very rapid rate, and are a great Canadian success story. So please join me as I welcome to the stage Tobi from Shopify. Test. Okay.
You live? Good.
So I just wanted to get through that really fast because I know we only have 25 minutes, and people are more interested in talking to you or hearing from you. We've had the luxury already of having a fireside chat literally beside your fire. Tobi has an incredible office just down the street from here, and he has what looks to be like a chalet almost when you walk in the door.
Yeah, so I didn't actually know what my office is going to look like until the day we moved into a new place, and we recreated the snowboard store actually. So it has like original snowboards in there.
Yeah. So with all this snowboard talk, I think the question people really want to know is why would you leave the Alps for Camp Fortune?
Yeah.
That's actually a real question.
That's a real question. And it's a good discussion. You know, like again, I grew up in the 80s, 90s. I describe myself as a European. Obviously, I'm from Germany, but like this is how we were raised. And Germany has, as everyone knows, a lot of trouble with its sort of past. So people like to circumvent, or at least during that decade, circumvented the whole sort of issue of guilt by just saying, "Hey, we are now Europeans," and so this is how we fought. I never thought I was one. I thought I was an American. I knew I was going to move to the United States, and at some point in my life I figured out that Canada is sort of the United States for Europeans, and then I committed.
Great. So I'm going to cut right to why we're here. We organized this conference because we wanted to talk about innovation. I was at another conference last week that Google hosted, similar themes. Harley was there, spoke very similarly today, very passionate, and he was on stage with Ted from Kik Livingston. And at the end of the session, Ted said to everybody in the audience, and I think he was directing it towards Minister Baines at the time, but he said, you know, if I was a public policy maker, I was a leader in Ottawa right now, I'd be terrified because software is eating the world. And all these things from banks and telecoms and all these things that you regulate and that you worry about right now are going to be completely consumed by software, and it's going to change the playing field. And I guess Shopify is one of those players. And so to all the people in these rooms who clearly look terrified, what do you have to say? Like, what do you think the future is, and what do you think we should be doing about it?
That's a good place to start, I guess. I don't think you could have picked a bigger topic now.
Narrow it down for me, Tobi.
You know, look, I'm a little bit out of my depth. My background is I started a company. I got really passionate about it. I invited friends to join me to build this thing that I felt like needed to exist, and now, 1,500 friends later, we're a public company and all these kind of things. I have a very narrow perspective into the world, and I certainly dedicate my entire 20s to like working 16 hours a day on code and these kind of things. So I don't know if I can really comment on such large policy issues. I think what I can say from this vector, my own perspective, is that I I agree that this is going to be an interesting time we're going into. I believe like every company in the world is either like currently is either turning into a software company or it's currently in the process of being disrupted by a software company. And I think everyone sort of, kind of sees that, right? Like the Blockbuster Netflix thing is a great example like of this, but it's really all encompassing. So why is this happening? And I think it all really has a lot to do. Like we thought it's going to be the internet that was this large change, the thing, the agent of change for the world, but it's really been the cell phone, right? Like essentially almost everyone in the world. I just spent a week in India, and you would not believe what's going on there. So essentially, almost everyone in the world has a piece of magic glass in their pocket that is actually a supercomputer, and it's really naive to think that isn't completely changing the way. How we spend our days, how we consume services, how we demand to, interact with our environment. You see now people pushing a button and a car magically appears, bringing you magically to exactly the place you want to go. And this is, this is a company Uber in this case, but it's not that Uber is this amazing company. It's just that Uber realized, hey, in this new world, how is this service of transportation going to be delivered? And to me, that is the key ingredient in the war mix, because the companies that struggle currently have user interface problems, UX problems for short. And I think government can be added to this list, right? Like if I move in Canada, I will have to go to like 3 different offices around town to just update my address. You compare that with me wanting to send a message to my entire family, and I can do this in 15 nanoseconds, frankly, and no matter where they are in the world. And you realize there's just a discrepancy. I think at some point, governments will realize that they are also essentially software companies, right? And therefore, they have to kind of adhere to the same ideas that people have about how they would like to interact with their world. I'm really, really excited about the prospect of, at one point in the future, having on my phone a big maple leaf icon with an app which is called Citizenship, for which I can interact with all the government services, and so on. And this is only the starting point in my eyes. So yes, there's a lot of change coming, and a lot of people are arguing, including on the panels earlier, that there are more coming. Like quantum is clearly in the future, but AI is happening before that, powered by data. There's a tremendous opportunity for governments to supercharge its economies because governments have a lot of data. So these are the kind of avenues I would point people at, but I haven't got tangible solutions for this.
Well, that's reassuring to some extent, but the pace of government means is what it is. It really kind of makes you start to think whether or not that we should be terrified, because effectively government can lose its customers in the same way that corporations lose their customers. And so I think I agree with you. We've got to figure out how do we become more agile as governments. There's also the responsibility that governments have in terms of regulatory regimes and supporting businesses and corporations in this country. I grew up at a time when we celebrated things like Nortel and BlackBerry, and I look back on those days, and I think that personally, I think that they were huge missed opportunities and huge failures. So I'm curious, to what extent do you think government should have interfered in that process? And moving forward, do you think that government should play a more proactive role in supporting its corporations and making them more competitive in the world, a la Israel, a la China? Or do you think we should go with this, let's sow the ground and see what grows approach?
It's a tricky question. And of course, I can't be completely neutral in something like this now. So I think here's what I'm going to say about it. I think it's extremely important to understand that, especially in the knowledge sector, the difference between a job for like any given job, a job for a company that is a Canadian headquartered company and a not Canadian headquartered company is almost completely unlike each other, like to the benefit of the economic base and society. This is partly due to I probably don't have enough time to get into it, but what I'm going to say is Okay, so if a job is people gathering sticks, let's just say, then the best stick gatherer in the world is probably twice, maybe 3 times as good as the average. As the complexity of a task goes up, this leverage changes. So now in technology, where people mostly work with information and also with computers and tools of leverage, the best people might be 100 times as good as the average, and this is measured by the amount of value that they generate. But this value is not captured completely through the salary process, as it was in times where, like, maybe in factories, like the people who made the widgets the fastest also got more salary, maybe twice as much as the others. So because of that, technology has a value leverage, and what happens is that this value ends up being captured not by taxes directly, but usually through the value of the equity that the people have who, frankly, work at headquarters, or the people who have been around for a long time. So the company like Shopify, for instance, the amount of value that has been generated is almost entirely to the benefit of a Canadian government, where if you have an office, let's say let's pick Siemens, it's a company I used to work for, so just randomly picked. If they have a big office here in Ottawa, and the great machine learning AI talent will gravitate there, and people do these breakthroughs, almost the entirety of that value actually travels outside of the country. So, long story short, I think there is like a high ROI on trying to preserve companies to stay Canadian and be headquartered here. And I think this is actually key to understanding the current time. Because I think about this a little bit differently. Like, a lot of people are saying, well, the new normal is every company is lasting 5 years only, and then it's being disrupted and replaced by something new. And what should we invest in all these companies because they are going to be gone tomorrow and all this kind of stuff. I actually don't think so. I think what we are seeing is an almost complete generational replacement of companies because of the new realities of mobile phones and the user interfaces that consumers demand and increasingly workers in enterprises demand. So what we actually have is a game where, like, every company is being tested, and if they found wanting, they're going to be replaced. And that's actually a massive opportunity. But this is a phase which is eventually going to be over, and then maybe it's coming around again when AI and quantum hit, and augmented reality, which is another big one. But it's important that Canada ends up at, like, once the dice hit the table, we really need headquarters, is what I'm saying, and I think this is what the government should, I think, help with.
And you mentioned the word disruption. We hear the word thrown around. It's like one of those startup words, pivoting, disruption. I'm just curious, so the government has a role in managing this disruption. There's this unique thing in Canada, which is something I think you celebrated and what you liked about Canada. We call it the social contract. And the government is there to make things easier for Canadians and to facilitate these disruptions or these changes. It seems like those are happening at such a rapid pace, as you've just described. So, I mean, I think this is very worrisome. And I wonder to what extent government has a role in both being disruptive and helping to, innovate companies and grow companies or businesses or research centers or whatever it may be, but also to mitigate them. And how do you find that balance? I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yes. I mean, it's tricky to find exactly the right role for government because, again, the phase that we're in right now is the one of global brainstorming. Again, we're setting the new patterns for how goods and people are moved around the planet, how services are consumed. Like, even Shopify itself, our goal is actually revolves around exactly, in fact, this social contract. If you look back in technology history, people talk a lot about, startups are so cheap to create. Even the Shopify story is two guys with laptops sitting in Bridgehead, almost no capital expenditure. We did not have to call Oracle and buy $2 million worth of databases and stuff like this. All this stuff is cheap, free, open source, cloudy, and all these kind of things. So that's a good narrative, but it's it's really missing something very important, which is that while it's gotten tremendously cheaper to build these companies, it's also gotten way harder. And not just harder in the buckle up and dig in kind of sense, but harder in all the things that you have to know to even participate in this. Like I'm a computer programmer, I've lived with technology, I'm probably one of the first group of people who were sort of these digital natives, because there was a computer in my home when I was 6 years old. Roughly around the age of 6, you start forming permanent memory. So from my perspective, computers were just always there, right? And so they've always been part of the way I see the world and how I think. And that's helped me tremendously. Because of that, I had the ability to start a company like this. But all we're doing right now is we're making it cheaper and cheaper for a smaller and smaller group, right? So what Shopify does is we want to actually push down the difficulty level. Like we are building, like we have hundreds of engineers working on making it more approachable for people to actually start their online businesses, because we think fundamentally that like the world of jobs is going to be in a pickle, right? Because what is the societal value of someone flipping burgers? Like it's, like I understand this is a job which is valuable at certain stages and so on, but like the value of that to society is essentially zero. So the interesting thing, though, is that is almost essentially in my worldview, in no case the greatest thing that this individual can do. Like everyone then goes home and is like really into something, and once you're really into something, especially in a combination of things, you actually have something to give back to the world, right? And I think like allowing people to be able to give something back to the world is actually I think the thing that needs to be preserved, and the thing that we're taking away by making it harder and harder to create businesses. So I get to talk with entrepreneurs every day, like people who like quit their job as a nurse because they're really into like craftsmanship, and they made their own jewelry, and they were really into Pokemon. And so they made Pokemon jewelry, and suddenly they signed up for Shopify, started selling it, and made a great living for themselves. And then Pokemon Go happened, and now it's a massive business, right? So these are meaningful ways for people to self-actualize. And her grandkids might actually one day describe grandma as an entrepreneur because that thing happened, because they could put their interests together. And I think this is just like, I think private industry does that to a certain degree, but preserving these ideas is something that government can just like be very helpful with.
Yeah, I do get that sense that a lot of the corporate tech sector is starting to approach things with a more benevolent approach. I mean, Shopify just launched this education initiative with Carleton, which I'd love to hear more about. But you've got Google and Facebook and all these massive corporations that are contributing to that public good debate, and it's a kind of an interesting phenomenon to see. The cynical would say, well, they're just trying to increase market share, and that's what you do. But listening to what you just said, it seems as though there's a more direct contributing factor.
I think it's actually not cynicism, but it is something almost worse, which is guiltiness. Because again, I think the centralization of wealth that is coming with, Google. You look at Google, you look at Facebook. It's the same deal. Both of them, this is number 1 and 2 most valuable website in the world, and both of them make their money by having a monopoly to place ads on these kind of things, which is a very, very different environment than 20 years ago with the newspapers, right? So clearly there's a lot of value destruction that happens from a situation like this. And so I think it's extremely good that there's a social component to these companies. And we've seen this in history, Rockefeller at some point felt pretty guilty about what he was doing as well, right? So, but I think this is, I don't think this is going to go the entire way. I think we really do need to think about, not just in the short term, but in the long term, what do we want society to look like that decouples understands that some volunteer, again. So when I was really young, I had lots of problems, right? I'm sort of a contrarian. I challenge everything. Teachers really don't like that kind of thing. So luckily there was a place in my town which I went to. There are a lot of kids like me went to, and there was amazing volunteers who kind of got us back on the right track, right? So they didn't earn a cent for that, but like I ended up being enormously lucky, and through like being in the right place, right time, the right idea, and finding the right people, I ended up building a public company that like creates a meaningful amount of contribution to the to the economy. So, how is that person's like contribution to value in society any less than like we would currently measure and say the person flipping the burgers is more important because we actually give them money for rendering a service. The volunteer, it's too hard to track, and therefore we kind of don't. Mm-hmm. Like there got to be solutions to this. There got to be ways to allow more people to actually tap into the thing that makes them special. And decouple this a little bit from the salaries. Like, I'm essentially leading an argument towards like, let's look into basic income because it seems to me the right solution. I know this is really terribly hard to do. And I have not the first idea how to start, but like I think it fits into the narrative that I think Canada can provide to the world, because it seems to me the most Canadian thing possibly we could accomplish.
I'm sold. I'm enthusiastic at the idea that good, innovative solutions coming out of Canadian companies in Canada will make the world a better place. And we saw some examples of that yesterday, and again, the coding project that Shopify is embarking on is another example of that. So it makes it all the more important to me that we have those companies here in Canada. And my fear is that these initiatives and these technologies are going to continue to be developed here in Canada, but then be monetized and scaled up in other countries. And Shopify has avoided that so far, and we're optimistic that you'll continue to stick it out here in Canada and to help grow our tech sector and bring more of these amazing social innovations to Canada. I'm curious to what you think the government can do to help that process. Again, coming back to innovation, as a taxpayer, as somebody who's happy to contribute to supporting Canadian companies and their growth objectives, it kind of bugs me that they take that benefit and they go abroad with it. I don't think government should prevent people from expanding. I don't think we should curtail FDI, but at the same time, we got to figure out, don't we, how to keep more Shopifys in Canada? How do we do that?
Yeah, I mean, I would go a step further and think we should curtail FDI a little bit. I think it stems from time.
Of all the things he caught was the FDI comment.
But like, I think this, like, look, let's.
How do we keep Shopifys in Canada?
Exactly.
I got it.
This is really, honestly, this is something the government absolutely can help with, and it's actually really cheap. Which is, I've been tuned to this station for a while, but I can't do it alone. Canada is such a wonderful country in so many ways. It's so inspiring for a German to come to a country and encounter such a loyal, hardworking, and frankly fundamentally optimistic society. This is something Germany absolutely is lacking. Tomorrow is better than today is like what everyone will sign up for in this place. But there is a thing holding Canada back, and it just rears its ugly head everywhere, which is that Canadians have a society-wide cultural inferiority complex to the United States. And this, you see this everywhere. Like, you see it absolutely everywhere. Like, it's the parents who tell their kids, you have to do your degree, not because that degree is good for you, but because that helps you with immigration to the United States. It's the parents who give you much more credit for getting an internship with Facebook than an internship at Nortel during the times of their heyday, or Shopify now, or all the other wonderful companies that exist. We are raising people, like kids, to leave. And it's crazy because I'm also someone, like I go to Silicon Valley a lot, and I meet with all the, executives of these kind of companies. And here's what happens. First thing is like, oh, I grew up in Winnipeg, or I'm Canadian, and like everyone then turns around. It's like, you're Canadian, and this is something you encounter everywhere. The amount of top people across all the public companies of the United States that are Canadian is ludicrous once you're actually adjusted for population of Canada. So why? Because it's top churn. It's like the best people leave. And so one of the big programs we are running is like, hey, let's get the best people back, which is actually working quite well. But like this is something we need to stop, right? And we need to, we also need to not sell the companies so early, like everyone's trying to do, because people just have, they don't have confidence that they can build these companies into American-style success stories from Canada, because Canada is Canada, and in Canada only has Canadian-style success stories, right, in the minds of many. And I think, honestly, a lot of the key to Shopify's success has been that both the co-founders happen to be German immigrants, and we just build a company with Canadians without this cultural affliction, and I think it's led to a complete, on an absolute scale, worldwide success story that has nothing Canadian about it, other than that it's aggregating everything that Canada is good about Canada, and the fact that we are trying to push down some of the trends that are perpetrated by the larger technology industry. And I think that feels good, and I think we need more of that.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more, Tobi. And I'm really grateful that you've come here and become Canadian. You're a perfect example of what a Canadian should be. So I'm glad you're here to help Canadians understand. So that's it. I think we've got no more time left, unfortunately. But thanks again, Tobi, for coming to talk to us.
Thank you very much.